everybody. I hope that you guys are ready to stay safe during the hurricane. But I wanted to talk today about some fear issues, because even if you're not in the path of this coming hurricane, you may have experienced the hurricane of fear in your own personal life. Fear can get away from us, and sometimes there's a good reason for us to be anxious or worried about something. In fact, fear itself, there's nothing wrong with having fear. It's a normal part of who we are. We're designed to have emotions, negative emotions and positive emotions, and they all have a purpose. In fact, our negative emotions are meant to inform us. If we use them correctly, we can actually make changes into our circumstances or ourselves to better and to improve where we are and where we're going and what's going to happen. However, if we don't take the time to reflect and really try to interpret what can best be done with that emotion and how to respond to that red flag, then sometimes the emotion gets out of control and it tempts us to do some things that we shouldn't do. You might see some people that are panicking right now in response to the hurricane, for example, and not treating their neighbors well. I saw kind of the opposite today. I was out getting supplies. I'm in Florida, so we're preparing for a Category 5 storm right now, and some people are panicked and freaking out, and other people are just polite and nice and letting you into the aisles. I saw the kindest people, smiling faces in the stores that I was in today. I really appreciated that. Everybody was friendly, and I didn't see a lot of fear responses. Most of the time when people are really afraid, and that may happen later in the week, people tend to be on their worst behavior because they're self-protected, and they're not reining in that fear into concern, and they're letting it become a hurricane in their hearts and their minds and in their behavior, and sometimes even in their language toward other people. So instead of letting that hurricane of fear spin you out of control, rein it in and learn how you can use it to benefit you. One way that you can rein that in is to identify what the concern is. How can I look at why I'm afraid? If I'm afraid, for example, of the storm that's coming, okay, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of not having supplies? Well, I can work on that. Am I afraid of damage? I can somewhat prepare for that to a certain degree. I mean, there's only so much I can do. Am I afraid of loss of life? I can do some things about that and some things I can't do about that. So knowing what you can do and doing what you can, and then understanding where that line lies. Not letting yourself go past that line from concern that's healthy, that's going to benefit me so that I can take the action steps I need to take, and stepping over that and worrying about things that I can't have any impact upon. They're out of my control, and refusing to let yourself get spun out of control over things that you have no power to influence. And one way that I tell clients to do this as a counselor or a coach is to say, let's get some plates, because we sometimes talk about our responsibilities as all the stuff on my plate. So if you can think about what's on my plate, the things that I have the opportunity and power to influence and to change, those would be the things that are on my plate. Anything that I don't have any power to do anything about can't be on my plate. It shouldn't be on your emotional plate or on the plate of your heart if you have no power to do anything about it. So those things oftentimes are on somebody else's plate, or usually those are the things that are on God's plate. If I'm going to die, that's kind of mostly, as long as I'm not doing something stupid or I'm not failing to do something to protect myself that I should, then most of that is really on God's plate. He holds my life in his hands. And if there's going to be damage to my house and it's going to get wiped into a big splat of sticks, you know, if I've done everything I can to protect against that, the rest of that's all on God's plate. And is he going to be with me at the end, whether those things happen or not? If I've done what I need to do to be right with God before this happens, then we're good. If I die, we're good. I know where I'm going, right? So I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to die or not. I can do the things that I need to do and not worry past that line of what I can do something about. and making sure you can rein that in so that you're only doing what you have power to do. You get your supplies, you protect your house. If the governor says to evacuate, you evacuate. I mean, you do what you need to do. That's a reasonable step toward protecting your life and your property and the things about you. And then if you continue to worry past that, then it's no longer healthy. That's how you know the difference between a concern and an unhealthy fear or anxiety or worry. Now, beyond getting those plates, another thing that you can do is look at your thought patterns. And monitoring your thoughts can be really helpful. You can't directly change your emotions, but you can change or replace negative thought patterns. Once you've identified what the concern is, what are your thoughts and your beliefs about that concern? If such and such happens, I will not be able to survive that. That's a lot of times what people are really thinking. And they don't stop to think, oh, that's kind of where my thoughts were going. I'll never be able to handle this. I'll never be able to survive this. What if something happens to my family? What if something happens to my home? What if? And all of those what if thoughts are open-ended. And if you stop and really look at fear dead in its beady little eyes, it's kind of like a little rat. It looks bigger when its shadow's cast on the wall in front of you, and it really doesn't have that much power. You're bigger than the rat, and God is a lot bigger than that rat. And instead of taking that on and saying, you've got me, what if, and these open if questions that are nebulous and don't really have an answer, kind of look at it and go, okay, well, what if? What if these things happen? Am I really not going to be able to survive if God is with me? And so change that what if thought to an even if, then God. Even if I die, then God has got me. Even if my house is reduced to rubble, then God is going to be with me in the middle of that. It won't be great for that to happen, of course. I wouldn't want that to happen, and these are all things that we don't want to happen. But if they do, even if they do, will God be with me? Will God and I be able to handle this together? Not will I be able to handle it, because I can't handle a whole heck of a lot by myself, but God and I together can do anything. And it may be awful, it may be difficult, but a lot of things in life are going to be awful and difficult. And if we spend ourselves out of control worrying about if something terrible is going to happen, well, okay, something terrible is probably going to happen. And you're going to live in terrible all the time worrying about something terrible. It's going to happen. But will God be with you in it? If you choose to submit your life to Him, He will. And He can sustain you when you don't have the power to keep going. He can make you strong enough to deal with things that you don't have the strength to deal with. He can comfort you when there is no comfort. And He can motivate the rest of us to be the hands and feet of Christ to reach out and comfort those around us. So we can be present with Him instead of in fear, but in faith, saying even if, just like in the story of Daniel's 3 friends that came with him into Nebuchadnezzar's reign, and Nebuchadnezzar had told everyone they needed to bow down to him. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were told, if you don't bow down to the king, then you'll be incinerated in a fiery furnace. And they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't bow down. And the king had said, can your God save you? And this is an interesting response they had. And it's a similar response that we can have in the face of a Category 5 storm or something horrible that could possibly happen in our lives that might feel like a Category 5 hurricane coming on. Yes, my God can deliver me, but even if He does not, I still will not bow down. I will not give fear the authority that God deserves in my life. Now, it doesn't mean it's a sin to be afraid. That's a normal part of our human response. But it does mean we can choose to put a different thought in there and not allow fear to be the hurricane that spins us out of control. We can choose to cling to our faith and our thoughts and say, even though I'm feeling anxious about what's going to happen, I don't have to let fear win. I don't have to bow down to it. I don't have to surrender to this and let it rule me. I can choose to think over and over again on the promises of God. And that's one way that we can handle fear. We can find all those fear scriptures. Did you know that there's 366 of them in the Bible? 366. And if you email me, I'll be glad to give you a list of some of them that are my favorites, that help us to respond well to times when we're feeling anxious. It may not get rid of all of the fearful feelings, but it can help them stay in check and reined in, so that we're not giving them full-blown authority over us. And when you recite them out loud over and over and over again, then they can begin to replace those thought patterns that are fearful thought patterns. And fearful thought patterns tend to exaggerate. You'll notice those thought patterns that are saying the worst, never, always, all those big inflammatory words that we'll use. Those are signs that those are fear-based thoughts, and we need to rein those back in and temper those and change them. And usually when you say them out loud, you can recognize them better. So find out what you're believing about this circumstance that's making you more and more afraid. What are those beliefs? And a lot of those beliefs will be rooted in things that are only half true or that are exaggerated. And if you can identify that, then you can debunk it and take the power out of it. A lot of times saying it out loud will take the power out of it. So if you can find a wise friend, a life coach, or a counselor that you can talk to if you are prone to having a lot of anxious thoughts, they can help you process those thoughts and take all the power out of those thoughts for you and help you to recognize them when they start coming on and catch them early and keep them from spinning out of control. You can tuck those worry thoughts also into your Bible, and that can be a tangible way of you submitting your fears to God. You can also rephrase your fears, and instead of using that fear language, I'm afraid of, you can just say, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that. Because concern is healthy, but we don't have to bow our knees in fear over some things. It's healthy to be concerned about the storm. I mean, that would be ridiculous not to have any concern. And that would keep us from acting on the things that we need to do. But change that word fear to concern in your head, and it's amazing how powerful which words you choose to use over your life can be and how you respond emotionally to your thoughts. And then find something to do. If you just sit and think about what you're afraid of and sit there and sit there and sit there, then it's going to churn itself more and more and more. You notice how, like in a hurricane, when it's out in the ocean, if it sits in one spot over that warm water for too long, it gets bigger and it gets worse and it intensifies. It's when you need to find something to cool it down, run it over some land, get it some place to cool down, run it up against a different kind of a front, find something else to do. A calming activity or something to make you so that you're busy with other activities can sometimes really be helpful rather than just sitting and stewing in your fear. So some things that can be helpful to do is seeking laughter. Find something to make you laugh. And the better the laugh, the more powerful it can be. In fact, I know that sounds like a silly little thing, but it changes your brain chemistry when you laugh really hard. It actually can be as effective as anti-anxiety medication for some people to do some laughter. I have actually had clients who were taking large doses regularly throughout every day of anti-anxiety medication, and it was making them so tired that they couldn't function anymore. And they switched a little at a time toward using laughter instead. I mean, you have to be monitoring that with a doctor's approval if you're getting off of a medication, of course. But he found that laughter replaced his need for this medication, and he was no longer dependent on it. So laughter really does affect the chemistry of the brain, and so does exercise. I know nobody wants to hear that they have to exercise, but it's a lot better than taking medication, and it can make it so that you respond better to stress. And so it not only helps you in the moment to get all your endorphins going and to change your brain chemistry, but it can also make it so that when a stressor hits, you're able to react to it a little bit better. Cuddle a loved one or a pet. Those of you that have pets, there's research that's shown that petting an animal can reduce your blood pressure and your heart rate. So if you're feeling anxious, cuddle your pets. That can actually help you feel better. And watch for what your intake is. Sometimes the things that we're eating when we're stressed out and we're worried or drinking can actually make it worse. Actually, alcohol, which is what people do during hurricane parties, can make you less able to handle stress. In the moment, it's going to numb things, but the body's response to those chemicals is not a good one. So it doesn't help your brain do well. And sugars and all of those carbs and things like that, you get the spike and the crash, and that doesn't really help your serotonin level very much. So watch what you're eating, and if you tend to have high blood pressure and you're eating lots of salty snacks to help you feel better, then your blood pressure is going to spike even more. So just kind of be careful about what you're eating and keep it nutritious. You can have some wonderful, fun, nutritious things to eat that are good for you, that help you feel better. So do things that are good for your body, bless your brain, and bless your neighbors. The kinder you are to other people around you, the better you will feel. And that's the opposite of what we might feel like doing if we're afraid. But if you intentionally force yourself to be kind and to be gracious, you will find that you start to feel better yourself. So look into doing some of those things. Guided imagery, relaxation, breathing is also some really helpful techniques that I have taught clients to do to reduce anxiety. But my favorite is really replacing the what if with an even if. That's got to be my favorite. So what are your favorites? I look forward to hearing your comments, and I appreciate you guys watching, and please be safe for the hurricane. We'll be thinking about those who are in the islands and praying for them, and for those of you who are not in Florida, or those of you that are, let's all join together in our prayers and our thoughts for one another to keep each other safe and to be kind throughout this whole ordeal. Have a great and safe and wonderful and blessed week. Bye-bye.